I received an email from someone on LinkedIn today asking me a question. I want to go over it together and share some information on how I'd approach this. So let's read through what the message said. It said, "We are a mid-sized nonprofit that works with low-income clients to help them gain stability through education, job training, and support services." That's a great mission. Our board wants to launch a community innovation hub, cool project, a shared space where entrepreneurs, small businesses, community groups can access training, technology, and collaboration opportunities. The idea sounds exciting. Yes, it does. But we don't know where to start. What is the best approach to this? So let's walk through this, and I will go through and explain some of my reasoning or give some of my advice into what I do. So I would approach this just like I approach any other project. So there's really three things. So there's assessment and research, there's strategy and planning, and then there's resource development. Any project, concept implementation, you do those three things. And you always start with your assessment piece first, because with that project, you want to make sure that you're going to be fully informed and that you collect all the data to make sure you don't fall flat on your face. A problem is that a lot of times we get these cool ideas and we're excited about them, and they may be valid ideas, and sometimes this may work, and we just say let's go with it and forget to kind of do that assessment piece. Sometimes it works, but 99% of the time it doesn't. It falls flat on the face. So you have to be sure to assess. And so when you're assessing anything or doing any kind of research, there's always internal and there's external that you want to do. And so let's start first with internal research. So for this specific project, what I would do is, first off, I'd look at staff capacity. Obviously, can the team realistically take on a project of this scale without overextending the team? Do we need to hire more people? What would be the requirement there? I'd also review past workforce and entrepreneurship efforts in your community, or not in your community. That's the next part, external, but internally that maybe you have done, and with that, what's worked, what hasn't, really do an assessment. The idea is to identify what are your needs, what are your assets here, and then identify what your strengths are, like case management, community trust, strong grant compliance history. You have a strong donor base. What things do you think, what assets do you think that could contribute to this? But then you're also identifying, okay, well, what are the needs going to be there too as well? That's internal. Now, the external piece, you really want to go out and you want to research and assess the environment. And so I'd do three primary bits of research. Number one, I'd do a community assessment, like a community needs assessment. So I'd talk directly with low-income clients and identify what their barriers are, and to really understand, even if we built this, what are the needs that they're going to have in addition to this. I mean, this may be providing a solution to help them, create, jobs through entrepreneurship, but if you build something, how are they going to access it? Do they need transportation? Do they need internet access? Is that an issue? Is childcare? And, there's a lot of things that you have to think through. So I definitely want to do a community needs assessment where I talk directly with the target clients, who we're going to really try to work with. I'd also do a market analysis. So are there other hubs that exist in the vicinity? Are there other organizations doing the same thing? Is this redundant? Am I replicating something? Or is this a genuine idea that's going to be that nobody else is doing but is truly needed? So, and then I'd also, think about, some of your revenue mechanisms as well at the Innovation Hub, as you're not only, you're working with low-income populations to introduce them to entrepreneurship, but then you would likely probably use this as a hub for the community as a whole, all entrepreneurs. So is there a revenue mechanism there that you can attach and create from your clients as you think about sustainability? The last piece of assessment that I would do would be external assessment. That'd be a feasibility study. So model out what the rates are going to be, the costs, the expenses, and then really identify, can you financially raise the money to support this project, but not only that, can you sustain it? And then I would talk directly with potential people who may fund this project, whether that might be investors, whether it may be individual donors, or foundation donors, corporate donors, even state and federal grants. I would talk to all of them directly and ask them, what do you think about this? Would this be something you would support? If so, at what level do you think you would? Just to get an idea of how much money you realistically could raise for this. And so bottom line, this data, it gives you clarity on whether a project is going to be viable. And if so, how it needs to be shaped. And so always start with assessment and let that lead into the second thing that I mentioned, strategy and planning. With the information that you've collected, you can then map out a long-term vision and then bring it back in and kind of reverse engineer it into real-time actionable steps. And so with that, I think that what I would do, with this, I think if you had a vision for this to be a hub that increases economic mobility for low-income clients, and that's done through things like entrepreneurship and workforce training and access to technology. I would probably say your strategic priorities, number one, would really be with regard to how do we get this thing started, so raising the money for this, obviously, that would be strategic priority number one, raising the funds, but then also really making sure that you're building something that's going to be sustainable. And so with that, I would say some of your strategic priorities would be to pilot this thing first. Start small. You don't have to go build this grand building just to do this. You can start with leased space and or even like a pop-up model, build a proof of concept, and then let that grow into something larger. Program design, I would build around some core services to start out with, things like affordable co-working, training workshops, and mentorship or something like that. But start with a focus on just a few core services, get really, really good at doing that, be excellent at that, and then let that expand into other things. Accessibility, again, I mentioned this, I would really think about, designing supports like transportation stipends or even transportation itself, things like on-site childcare, digital access programs, partnerships. I would formalize collaborations with partners who would be interested in this and who could provide utility or value. That'd be things like workforce boards, local businesses, even universities provide training and partnership. And then, your another strategic priority I would really think that you would really need to focus on would be things like your operations plan. Outline what your staffing is. What is your membership model? What is the fee structure? How are you going to make this thing sustainable? How are you going to operate it at a level that it needs to be operated as? So that's where you can connect your big picture vision, the practical steps, the real-time steps to keep you from getting stuck in idea mode. And so that then leads to the resource development. Once you collect your data, you understand what your needs and assets are, you build your strategies, you build your plan to move this forward. That's when it comes to gathering up and developing the resources that you need. Resource development can be defined or lined out in two different veins or two different areas. There's financial capital and there's human capital. So with that, I would build out a special projects campaign, a fundraising campaign that really lays out very clearly what this project is, makes it exciting, has a compelling case for support, that really lays out a well thought out plan that will invite people not to give, but to be a part of something big. And so I would also, work to secure state and federal grants, foundation grants, corporate grants, and then work that down also in that plan to include your individual donors and investors if there are opportunities in that way. I'd approach corporate sponsors in the way of, that would have an interest in this. Things like a bank. A bank would probably have an interest in being a corporate sponsor because this basically gives them marketing to all the people coming to the center, they could potentially loan money to. So this ensures that the project has both the money and the people that it needs. And so as we go down thinking about human capital, I think starting with you're always going to want to have a good volunteer force. You're always going to want to focus on that, trying to develop a healthy volunteer force. You want to partner with their organizations like local universities if they're around, workforce developments, to help run these programs. And I think you will have to hire staff internally, at least a director to really spearhead this, a director specifically that probably has some specific experience in entrepreneurship development. And so when you approach the project that way, resource development part, you're covering all your resources and really thinking through this fully and moving forward. So it's assessment, research, it is strategy and planning, and then it's the resource development. So if I were advising this nonprofit, I would tell them, don't treat your innovation hub as a cool idea. Treat it as a strategic initiative. So start with the research, move into structured planning, and then build the resources around it. So that's how you transform anything from concept into implementation, into something that is sustainable, that is a high impact project, especially when you're working, in this capacity as this organization with low income populations. And so that's my advice. And so that's what I have for this specific question. So if you have a question, if you have something you're working on, I love spitballing. I love just coming up with ideas, and I would love to, hear from you. So shoot me a message. And if I can, I'll see if I can get you on a video, and we'll work through yours as well. All right. Hope this helps. Have a good one.